Breaking the Code. Chapter 1. The blaring ring of the alarm clock jolted Detective Jack Ryan awake. He fumbled to shut it off, squinting at the glaring red numbers 5:30 am. Just like every other morning. He groaned and dragged himself out of bed to start another day. In the dingy bathroom, Jack splashed cold water on his weathered face and stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror. His once sharp brown eyes now bloodshot and sunken after years of late nights on the force. Youthful enthusiasm had faded into monotony and cynicism from witnessing the worst of humanity day after day. Jack shuffled to the kitchen in his boxers and made a pot of bitter black coffee. As it brewed, he gazed out the smudged window at the flickering streetlights 8 stories below. Just another gloomy morning in the city. He longed for the days when the job was exciting and fulfilling, when he believed he could actually make a difference in people's lives. But after 2 decades on the force with little to show for it, Jack felt worn down and useless, like a flat tire that should have been changed years ago. The shrill beep of the coffee maker shook Jack from his stupor. He poured the inky liquid into a stained mug and took a scalding sip. No sugar or cream. He was sweet enough, right? If only the chief could hear his stellar dad jokes. Jack sighed, the flat joke only reiterating his growing apathy. He used to be so passionate about justice, wanting to help people and stop criminals in their tracks. But over the years, the worst of humanity had only continued unabated, and the powers that be were more concerned with good PR than real change. He was just a forgotten cog in the broken machine of law and order, trudging along and wishing for greener pastures that would never come. Well, time to get ready for another riveting day. Jack choked down a tasteless breakfast of burnt toast and leftover coffee as he got dressed. A rumpled shirt here, mismatched socks there, and his trusty leather jacket, the only stylish article left in his wardrobe. He grabbed his keys and phone and headed out the door, determined to down an extra cup of joe at the station before beginning another mind-numbing shift. Chapter 2. The fluorescent lights of the police station flickered overhead as Jack walked in, illuminating the dreary office. Phones rang, keyboards clacked, and printers whirred while bleary-eyed officers shuffled about. None looked happy to be there. Jack nodded at the secretary and made a beeline for the coffee. The sludge-like brew did little to perk him up, but the dose of caffeine coursing through his veins made him feel somewhat more alert. He gulped it down quickly to avoid tasting it. "Ryan, in my office," barked Chief Marlowe from across the room. Jack suppressed a sigh. It was going to be one of those days. The chief's office reeked of stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener. Award plaques and commendations coated the walls, remnants of the chief's glory days. He sat behind a cluttered desk, his wrinkled face set in a permanent scowl. "Close the door," the chief ordered. Jack complied and took a seat, the rickety chair creaking under his weight. "What's this about, sir?" "I'll cut to the chase," Chief Marlowe rasped in his gravelly voice. "You've been on the force for nearly 20 years now, but lately your performance reviews have been less than satisfactory. Sloppy paperwork, lax follow-through, bad attitude. I'm sure you can explain yourself." Jack bristled but held his tongue. He knew very well what the problem was. The problem was that after decades of banging his head against the brick wall of a broken system, he had nothing left to give. No motivation or passion for a job that failed to incite any meaningful change. But he wasn't about to say that to the chief's face. "My apologies, sir. No excuses for subpar work. I'll do better." Jack's false enthusiasm tasted bitter in his mouth. The chief raised a bushy eyebrow. I should hope so. I know you've been going through the motions lately, Ryan, but I see potential in you still, with the right opportunity. Jack perked up slightly. Was there finally a challenging case on the horizon? One that may rekindle his fading passion. I'm assigning you a new confidential case, the chief continued. A key witness to a homicide, left unable to speak due to a brain injury. Something about cryptic clues and drawings. Crack this case open and prove you still have what it takes. Don't let me down. Adrenaline coursed through Jack's veins at the prospect. A complex, high-profile case was just what he needed to break out of his slump. The thrill of the hunt called to him once more. Absolutely, sir. I won't disappoint, Jack said, rising from his seat. Finally, a chance at redemption. Chapter 3. Armed with a steaming cup of coffee, Jack sat at his desk sorting through the case files Chief Marlowe had provided. A female witness, Anna, had survived an attack that left her unable to speak normally. But she was somehow communicating cryptic clues about a murder she'd witnessed through strange drawings. A brain injury had unlocked something deep in her psyche, allowing her to convey information she couldn't verbalize. Jack sifted through Anna's sketches, perplexed. A spiral staircase, a pristine doll with one eye scratched out, a broken hourglass submerged in the ocean. Bizarre images that seemed unrelated. What was Anna trying to say? The case represented the ultimate puzzle, requiring tremendous discernment to decode the meaning hidden within her netherworld drawings. But Jack finally felt awake, his mind firing on all cylinders for the first time in ages. He craved the thrill of deciphering Anna's secrets and delivering justice. Like a bloodhound catching the scent, Jack felt purpose once more. For too long, Jack had allowed his passion for justice to lay dormant under a bitter exterior. But Anna's voicelessness called to him, her cryptic messages a lifeline to pull him from his sinking ship of apathy. He saw himself in her struggle to be heard and understood. Jack's own voice of hope had been smothered by disappointment and fatigue, much like Anna's brain injury prevented her true voice from being heard. She needed someone dogged enough to break her code. A valve had opened in Jack's soul, and he could not ignore this call to action. Jack studied late into the night, spreading each esoteric drawing across his desk under a halo of lamplight. What truth was Anna trying to convey from the depth of her being? Her very soul cried out for justice, using the only means left to her. Jack would dive to the bottom of this mystery or die trying. For the slightest chance to truly make a difference in one life gave Jack's own life renewed purpose. By giving voice to the voiceless, he rekindled his passion for justice, once believed long extinguished. A flame that could not be contained. He had to know the truth. For Anna's sake. For the sake of the murdered victim. And for his own sake most of all. The time had come to shake off the shackles of apathy and recommit to his life's purpose. The hunt was on. Chapter 4. The next morning, Jack arrived at the station fired up and ready to dig into Anna's case full throttle. As he approached his desk, he noticed a tall figure leaning against the partition. It was his longtime partner, Detective Carter Hughes. Carter, didn't expect to see you here so bright and early, Jack said, setting down his coffee. Carter flashed a grin. And miss your cheerful morning greeting? Not a chance. Jack smirked and sat down. He knew Carter meant well with his sarcastic banter, always trying to get a rise out of the perpetually dour Jack. They made an odd pairing, with Jack's cynicism offset by Carter's youthful idealism. but their opposing temperaments somehow worked. "Heard you got assigned the high-profile Jane Doe case," Carter said, his smile fading. "How you holding up?" Jack sighed and turned to the piles of drawings on his desk. "Honestly, I have no idea where to start making sense of these. The key witness can't physically speak. My only clues are these bizarre drawings." Carter picked one up quizzically. "Well, maybe there's some logic to the symbols that we're just not seeing yet. 2 heads are better than 1. I want in on this case." Jack raised an eyebrow in surprise. "You do, but Chief gave me strict orders to keep this confidential." "Come on, we're partners, aren't we?" Carter replied. "Let me help interpret these. An outside perspective might reveal connections you'd miss." Jack considered this. He did feel in over his head trying to analyze these cryptic sketches alone. Carter's uncanny ability to think outside the box would be an asset, and he trusted his partner to be discreet. "All right, you make a fair point," Jack conceded. "I'll bring you up to speed on all I know about the witness and her drawings, but this stays between us, got it?" Carter placed a hand over his heart in mock sincerity. "Cross my heart and hope to cry if I tell a lie." Jack just shook his head with a wry smile. Maybe Carter's levity was the yin to his yang that would prove balanced and effective. With his partner's help, they just might crack this case wide open. Chapter 5. While Jack and Carter analyzed Anna's drawings, across town a dark figure sat smoking in a dim apartment. His phone rang, an unknown caller. He answered with a gruff, "Yeah?" The modulated voice on the end replied, "The girl is still alive." The man bolted upright, his cigarette slipping from his fingers. Eyes narrowing, he asked slowly, "What did you say?" "Somehow she survived. She's recovered enough to start communicating with the cops about what she saw through damn drawings, apparently." The man cursed loudly and banged his fist on the table, rattling empty beer cans. That little mute tramp. She was supposed to be silenced for good. "I take it you haven't finished the job then?" he growled into the phone. "We had a deal, no loose ends. Now the cops are gonna sniff around asking questions, putting heat on both of us." The voice on the phone sounded defensive. "Hey, I did my part. How was I supposed to know she'd lived through a brain injury like that? Any sane person would have died." "Well, you clearly botched it. She's still kicking and talking somehow. So here's what you're gonna do." The man proceeded to describe in gruesome detail how he expected the witness to be eliminated once and for all. After hanging up, the man crushed his cigarette furiously. He had worked too hard covering his own tracks after that messy murder. One lone witness could bring his whole operation crashing down. He thought back to that night. The thrill of the kill always gave him a potent rush. It was unfortunate the girl had walked in and seen it unfold. An innocent in the wrong place at the wrong time. Collateral damage. Well, he would ensure she stayed silent for good this time. Then the cops would have no case, and he could resume business as usual. He wasn't about to let some spineless suit ruin everything because of one stroke of bad luck. The girl had to go. And if the cops stuck their noses where they didn't belong, he'd happily crush them too. Chapter 6. Late that night, Jack sat alone at his desk studying Anna's drawings intently. Carter had left hours ago, but Jack was too wired to sleep. As he compared the sketches, searching for any hidden connections, something jumped out at him. The pristine doll with scratched-out eyes, the broken hourglass, the spiral staircase leading into nothingness. These images revealed a dark truth Jack had overlooked. Anna felt voiceless and powerless, as if time were running out and the light in her soul scratched away. She seemed to be communicating something even more tragic than the murder itself. Through her sketches, Anna laid bare her pain and fear of being stuck in spiraling darkness, unable to speak her truth before time ran out. Jack leaned back in his chair, struck by the revelation. He had been treating this case so clinically, focused only on the logic puzzle to solve. But now he saw that Anna was not just a witness to be questioned. She was a living, breathing young woman who had undergone a horrific trauma, leaving her voice trapped inside. If he continued viewing her as a mere puzzle to decode, Jack risked missing the deeper human truth she longed to express. For the first time, Jack saw himself in Anna's struggle. How many times had he felt voiceless and powerless in his cynical police career, going through the motions, but unable to express his frustrated hopes of making a real difference? Anna's drawings mirrored his own hollowness. Jack resolved not to treat this case as just another box to check. This wasn't merely professional for him now, it was personal. Anna represented the voiceless victims he had pledged to serve and protect long ago as a rookie idealist. For her sake and his own, Jack desperately needed to break this code. He would be Anna's voice until she could fully reclaim her own. Jack stood abruptly, grabbed his jacket, and strode out into the night. There was somewhere he needed to be right now. The hospital where Anna lay recovering. He had to meet this brave girl face to face. Chapter 7. At the hospital, Jack sat in a hard plastic chair watching Anna sleep, her chest slowly rising and falling. Bandages swathed her head, and dark circles cradled her closed eyes. Jack studied the fragile young woman, moved by her vulnerable state. How scared she must feel, unable to verbally express the horrors imprinted on her mind. Jack swore in that moment to protect this voiceless witness with his life. Just then, Anna's eyes fluttered open and met Jack's. He offered what he hoped was a kind, reassuring smile. "Hello, Anna, I'm Detective Jack Ryan. I've been assigned your case, and I promise I'm going to bring the person who did this to justice." Anna simply stared back, her eyes two deep wells of wisdom and sadness belying her youth. Jack's heart ached for the innocence and peace of mind stolen from her. He cocked his head, searching those soulful eyes for some spark of understanding. "I know you've been through an unimaginable ordeal," he said gently. "But I believe your drawings hold the key for us to solve this case. Will you continue making them for me?" Slowly, Anna nodded. Jack let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Thank you, Anna. I know it's not easy, but bringing your attacker to justice will prevent them from hurting anyone else," Jack continued. "For now, focus on resting and recovering. I'll be back tomorrow to check on you." Outside Anna's room, Jack encountered her doctor. "Detective Ryan, is it? I'm Dr. Kate Morris." Jack shook the doctor's outstretched hand. Her grip was firm, but her eyes mirrored the pain Jack had seen in Anna's. "Doc, give me the full rundown on Anna's condition," Jack requested. "Her ability to communicate through these drawings intrigues me." The doctor nodded solemnly. Anna suffered major head trauma that damaged the speech center of her brain, so language is challenging. But remarkably, the visual center remains intact, drawing taps into that undamaged part of her mind, allowing expression without words. Jack rubbed his chin, contemplating this. "Will her speech ever return fully? I need her testimony to catch the killer." "With extensive therapy, Anna may slowly regain some speech," the doctor replied. But for now, her drawings are your best insight into her experiences. Jack understood. He would need patience and discernment to unravel Anna's cryptic messages. But he now had a plan. Earning Anna's trust while diligently decoding her images was Jack's surest path to revelation. He would protect this voiceless girl while amplifying her vital insights any way possible. Chapter 8. The shadowy figure parked his car down the block from the hospital and watched the entrance through binoculars. Tonight was the perfect chance for him to sneak in and finish the job on that pesky witness. With minimal staff on night duty, security was lax, and the girl's room number was easy enough to obtain from the hospital directory. All that stood between him and protecting his secret was one sleeping, defenseless girl. The killer had contemplated how best to end the girl's bothersome existence. Slipping poison into her foreline would be quiet, but too easy to trace back to him. Smothering her in her sleep appealed to his twisted fantasies, but seemed too risky here. No, quick and clean was best, a lethal injection directly to the heart. Untraceable and easy to claim, it was just a complication of her injuries. The thought of silencing her frantic heart and watching the life drain from her eyes gave the killer a sick sense of satisfaction. The thrill of deciding another's fate was the ultimate high. He was savage, like a rabid animal hungry for the kill. Reason and conscience did not sway him. In one swift move, the killer emerged from his car and entered the hospital lobby. Donning a stolen lab coat and clutching a medical bag containing his makeshift murder weapons, he looked the part of a professional. Ignoring the squirmy pangs of his blackened conscience, he strode with startling confidence to the stairwell. Climbing to the third-floor intensive care unit, the killer easily slipped past the nurses' station. All the better that the night nurses seemed half asleep. He smirked, the foolishness of polite society blind to the vipers lurking in plain sight. At last he located the girl's room 307. Holding his breath, the killer silently turned the handle and pushed inside. The steady beep of monitors filled the dark room with an eerie glow illuminating the sleeping girl's face. So innocent, so helpless, and soon to be lifeless. With surgical focus, the killer prepared his syringe, ready to end this thorn in his side once and for all. He leaned over the bed, his eager eyes locked on the pulsing vein in her slender neck exposed above her hospital gown. One quick injection was all it would take to silence her forever. "Sweet dreams, my dear," he whispered as he lowered the needle to her neck, puncturing her pale skin. Just as he pushed the plunger to deliver the fatal dose, a strong hand gripped his shoulder. "I don't think so, dirtbag," growled a low voice. The killer spun to find himself face to face with a ferocious-looking police detective, who swiftly disarmed and cuffed the shocked killer. His sinister plan had failed. Chapter 9. Adrenaline still coursing through his veins hours later, Jack reviewed the hospital surveillance footage, showing the chilling murder attempt. He watched the target creep towards Anna's room, syringe in hand. Jack shuddered, realizing how close the killer had come to silencing Anna forever. As lead detective on the case, Jack blamed himself for not anticipating such a brazen attack. He should have posted officers at Anna's door for protection. But never again would he let her down. Saving Anna's life last night had only strengthened Jack's commitment to keeping her safe, no matter what. Her survival was now his personal crusade. He barely knew this girl, yet felt innately bound to defend her like the little sister he never had. Jack had lost his own moral compass long ago, but protecting Anna kept him oriented true north. Studying the assailant's face frozen in close-up on the screen, Jack seared every detail into memory. The heavy brow, the thin lips curled in a leer, the utter lack of conscience in his pale gray eyes. Jack would find this man, no matter how long it took. For now, he was Anna's guardian until she fully recovered her voice and ability to testify against the killer. Jack realized this case had evolved beyond a professional obligation. Seeing the killer's nonchalant willingness to snuff out an innocent life had reignited a fire within Jack's soul. He again felt part of a calling greater than himself to shield the vulnerable who rely on the justice system for protection. Jack had promised to be Anna's voice. Now he vowed to also be her crusader. And when the time came to face the killer in court, Jack knew he must not fail. The thought of Anna's vacant eyes and muted voice if the killer eluded punishment was too much to bear. He would give his all to uncover the truth behind her drawings and buy Anna's voice time to return. Her testimony would put the killer away for good. Of this sacred quest, Jack was now utterly convicted. Chapter 10. The next morning found Jack back at the police station, poring over files and gulping coffee as if it were oxygen. He was a man possessed. After the attempt on her life, Anna had been transferred to an undisclosed secure location until the killer was caught. This only intensified Jack's urgency to break the case as quickly as possible. As Jack rapidly scribbled notes, threading connections between disparate leads, his partner Carter eyed him warily. "Come up for air, Jack. You look like you haven't slept in a week." Jack didn't glance up from the files strewn across his desk. "There's a killer on the loose gunning for our key witness, so no, sleep hasn't been top priority." Carter crossed his arms. "Yeah, I know the stakes are high, but running yourself into the ground won't help Anna. When's the last time you ate a decent meal anyway?" When Jack didn't immediately reply, Carter sighed. "Look, I get that you feel responsible for her safety, but you can't save Anna at the expense of your own health. Let me shoulder some of this." Jack finally sat back, realizing the dark smudges under his bloodshot eyes did give him a rather crazed appearance. As much as he hated to admit it, Carter had a point. Burning himself out would not keep Anna safe. "All right, partner, I hear you," Jack conceded, rubbing his temples. "I may have become a tad obsessed, but this case feels personal. That girl depends on me cracking this." Carter nodded. "I understand, believe me, but pacing yourself for the long haul is the best way to see Anna through this. Stay sharp, stay healthy. We're in this together." Jack offered a weary smile. "Thanks for keeping me in check. Now, what do you say we grab lunch? My treat for being such a fanatical basket case." Carter clapped Jack on the back. "Now that's the spirit. Let's fuel up for justice." Chapter 11. Jack strode quickly down the hospital corridor, coffee in one hand, Anna's latest batch of drawings in the other. Reaching her room, Jack stopped short. The door stood ajar. Heart pounding, he rushed inside. The room was empty, bedsheets tangled across the mattress. No signs of struggle, but no Anna. Jack searched every corner in vain. She was gone. Jack bolted to the nurse's station, flashing his badge. "Where is the girl from room 307? He demanded. The nurse's eyes went wide. "I am not sure, she was just here an hour ago." Jack was already sprinting for the exit. Jumping into his car, he radioed the station. "Chief, we have a major situation. Anna's gone, vanished from her hospital room." "What?" boomed the chief's angry reply. How could you let this happen on your watch, Ryan? Jack slammed his fist on the steering wheel. How had he let the killer slip through his fingers twice? Racking his brain, Jack searched desperately for where Anna could have been taken. With her gone, the case was as good as dead. He had failed her. For weeks, Jack worked around the clock, tracing every lead that might locate Anna. But it was as if she had disappeared into thin air. No ransom or demands from the kidnapper. The killing had been so clean, so calculated. As days turned to weeks with no breaks in the case, Jack grew gaunt with sleepless nights and mounting guilt. He had promised to be Anna's guardian, and instead let the killer snatch her away. Now her voice was silenced indefinitely, her drawings ceased. Jack felt utterly powerless. Chief Marlowe finally broke the news Jack dreaded. Ryan, we have to declare this case cold for now. It's been a month with no progress, I'm sorry, but we don't have resources to chase ghosts indefinitely. Jack opened his mouth to object, but no argument came. The chief was right. Without Anna, they had hit a dead end. Yes, sir, Jack managed to reply in choked defeat. He trudged from the office feeling like he left his last shred of hope behind. After all his big talk of justice, Jack had failed. Anna was on her own now. Unless by some miracle her drawings could still reveal the truth from beyond the grave. Chapter 12. His shoulders slumped in defeat. Jack sat alone analyzing Anna's sketches one last time, more out of self-punishment than any real hope. He sighed, about to close the file and resign himself to failure. But one specific drawing gave him pause. It depicted a looming house, separated from the other sketches. Jack leaned in, examining the house's dilapidated state. A place like that must be abandoned. Could the isolation indicate Anna's location? Jack's pulse quickened. It was a long shot, but his only lead right now. Jack rushed to research abandoned estates in the area. Cross-referencing old case files, a name leapt out: the Varney house. Decades ago, police had investigated the family for suspected criminal activity, but never made any charges stick. The estate was rumored to be where the Varneys conducted business, often buried bodies of those who crossed them. Jack shuddered at the implications. Calling Carter, Jack explained his tenuous lead. I know it seems crazy, but we have to check out that estate if Anna really is being held captive there. This could crack the whole case wide open. Carter sounded hesitant, but agreed to help, knowing time was running out for Anna. Jack just prayed his hunch proved correct, and Anna was somehow giving them a lifeline. This felt like his last chance. Under the cover of night, Jack and Carter approached the looming Varney house, which creaked and groaned against the bitter wind. The dried-up gardens resembled a graveyard. Jack could hardly imagine a more unsettling place to keep someone imprisoned. His heart ached for Anna having to endure this nightmarish isolation. Peering through a filthy window, Jack made out a huddled figure in the gloom. Signaling Carter, the two forced entry into the crumbling mansion. With guns drawn, they swept through each room, braced for confrontation. But the house appeared deserted except for its lone occupant. At last, they arrived at what looked to be a makeshift cell. Inside, curled up on a rotting mattress, lay Anna. Jack let out a choked sob of relief. She raised her haunted eyes to meet his, and he saw a spark of hope there. They had found her. Chapter 13. Anna refused to let go of Jack's hand, even as the medical team checked her over. He gave a comforting squeeze, letting her know she was safe now. But Anna's eyes remained clouded with memories too horrific to speak of. Jack's heart broke wishing he could restore her sense of security. Back at the hospital, once Anna was finally calm, Jack knew he had to ask the critical questions. "Anna, I know this is so hard, but I need you to be brave and share anything you can remember about your abduction. We're very close to catching the man responsible." Anna glanced anxiously at the sketchpad Jack provided, then began slowly drawing a detailed portrait. The image sent chills down Jack's spine. He recognized the distinctive sneer. It was the same man who had tried to kill Anna weeks ago. The nurse's garb had been a disguise. "Anna, is this the person who took you from the hospital?" Jack asked gently. She gave a small nod, her eyes brimming with tears. Seeing her distress, Jack felt ready to tear this monster limb from limb. "You're safe now," Jack soothed. "We're going to put him away for good, I promise. Will you draw me anything else you remember?" Haltingly, Anna began sketching a sequence of images depicting the night of the murder. She drew herself hiding behind cabinets, peering out. Then an unknown man yelling, and the killer approaching him with a knife. Finally, the killer standing over the victim's body before turning and noticing Anna. The story came into chilling focus. Anna had secretly witnessed the murder and barely escaped with her life. That was why the killer wanted her permanently silenced. She could identify him. Jack now had a first-hand account of the crime, thanks to Anna's drawings. "This is exactly what we needed, Anna," Jack said, squeezing her hand again. "Because of your bravery, we can now bring him to justice." For the first time, Anna gave a small smile. She picked up the sketchpad and wrote out the words "safe." Jack nodded firmly. "Yes, you're completely safe now." And he meant it with every fiber of his being. Chapter 14. Jack tacked Anna's drawings to the evidence board back at the station, sensing he was tantalizing close to a breakthrough. Carter studied them pensively. "So we have a perp, but no ID," Carter said. "Any of these faces look familiar?" Jack shook his head, stumped. "It's definitely our hospital assassin, but he's a ghost, no records or known associates." He sat back, running both hands through his hair in frustration. "There must be something we're missing." Carter tapped his chin. "Maybe if we look at this backward, who would want the victim dead? That could lead us to the killer." "Worth a try," Jack agreed half-heartedly, scanning the unknown victim's portrait. "I'll run his face through our databases, see if anything pops." Jack's voice trailed off as recognition slowly dawned. He leapt up to pull a dusty file from the archives, blowing off the cobwebs. Comparing the crime scene sketch with the file photo, Jack started with disbelief. The victim was none other than Enzo Varney, estranged son of the notorious Varney crime family. "That's the link," Jack exclaimed. "Our killer must have ties to the family's criminal empire. With Enzo out of the way, he hoped to seize more power for himself." Anna witnessed him making his move. Carter's eyes widened with the same epiphany. Of course, and what better place to hide Anna than the abandoned family mansion? Jack was already grabbing his keys, newly burning with purpose. Let's nail this parasite. Chapter 15. Tires screeching, Jack pulled up to the family mansion, which somehow looked even more foreboding in daylight. Drawing his gun, Jack approached slowly. The reply call confirmed an arrest warrant was now issued for Varney's suspected killer, Vincent Renault. Jack could barely contain his anticipation. This was the moment he had worked toward relentlessly. Finally taking down the man responsible for the senseless murder that had cost Anna so much. Adrenaline pumped through his veins. Stepping inside the creaking foyer, Jack cleared each room methodically with Carter close behind. In the grimy kitchen, they discovered a trapdoor concealed under debris. Jack nodded to Carter, readying himself for confrontation. With guns aimed steadily down the cellar stairs, the detectives descended into the shadows. The damp underground chamber clearly served as headquarters for the Varneys' clandestine activities. Crates of contraband lined the walls. There, sitting casually at a desk, was the pale-eyed figure who had haunted Jack's every waking moment. Hearing their approach, the killer sprang up, reaching for a weapon. "Freeze, Renault!" Jack bellowed. "Hands where we can see them." The killer hesitated, assessing his options, then raised his hand slowly. His thin lips curled into an icy grin. "Detective Ryan, we meet at last, though I'm afraid you've made a mistake. I'm just an old friend of the Varneys." His measured tone radiated cold confidence. Jack kept his gun trained on Renault's chest. "Save it. We know you murdered Enzo Varney. The witness testimony seals your fate." Renault's grin vanished, replaced by murderous rage at the mention of Anna. "That timid girl knows nothing. You have no concrete evidence I killed anyone." Sensing Renault's volatility, Carter tried to diffuse the tension. "Let's all just take a deep breath and handle this by the book, okay? Come down to the station, get this all sorted out." But Jack would not back down. Not when Anna's abuser stood before them unrepentant. "No more games, Renault. You're done preying on innocents." Jack stepped forward to cuff the seething killer. With startling speed, Renault lunged sideways and snatched a gun from the desk. "I warned you not to meddle, detective," he hissed. "Now face the consequences." Shots rang out in the confined space. Chapter 16. Jack dove for cover behind crates as Renault blasted wildly. Carter returned fire while struggling to get off a distress call. "Officer down, officer down, gunmen opening fire at Varney Mansion." Pinned down, Jack's mind raced. He knew Renault would fight to the death to avoid prison. An escape route likely existed somewhere in the labyrinth cellar. Jack had to take him down now. Peering around the crate, Jack got off 2 quick shots that splintered the desk where Renault was barricaded. The killer was forced to abandon his position, rolling behind a concrete column. But the new angle gave Jack a clear view of his leg. Taking careful aim, he fired, a direct hit to the kneecap. With a howl of pain, Renault collapsed, grasping his shattered knee. Jack rushed forward to finally subdue the monster as Carter provided cover. Cuffing Renault's wrists, Jack roughly hauled him upright. "It's over, scumbag. Anna's testimony will bury you," Jack spat with unrestrained contempt. Renault's face contorted in impotent rage. "That useless whelp. She should have died quickly instead of dragging this out." He thrashed violently, spewing threats, but Jack held firm. Upstairs, the cavalry finally arrived, led by Chief Marlowe. Assessing the bully-riddled scene, he let out a low whistle. "Jesus, Ryan, guess you got your man after all. We'll take it from here." Reluctantly releasing his iron grip on Renault, Jack allowed officers to haul away the howling killer. He met Carter's eyes in shared relief. Against all odds, they had won. After Renault was secured in the back of a squad car, the fight seemed to drain from his eyes. Defeat loomed certain, but Jack knew the case was far from closed. He still had to support Anna as star witness, when she faced down her tormentor in court. Renault's mask of civility had finally slipped, exposing the animal within. Jack had stared into those vacant eyes. He knew the darkness that lurked in the recesses of Renault's soul. A wounded animal remains most dangerous. Jack would stay vigilant until Renault faced final justice. Chapter 17. Adrenaline still pumping long after the standoff, Jack found he could not unwind. In the quiet of his apartment, the day's events played on repeat in his mind. He had come so close to losing his life chasing justice. Was it worth the risk? Jack turned the question over in his mind, examining his motivations. Why did putting away criminals like Renault matter so much? On the surface, it was his duty as an officer sworn to protect. But deeper down, Jack sensed this case had become personal. In Anna, he saw innocence robbed of security, forcing her into silence. Jack could not abide the thought of evil prevailing through intimidation. Anna's voicelessness called directly to Jack's sense of morality. It mattered because she mattered. Jack realized that in pledging himself to safeguarding Anna, he was also redeeming himself. For too long, he had grown cynical and aimless about creating real change. But protecting the vulnerable and voiceless had reignited Jack's passion for justice. He was ready to sacrifice everything to be Anna's crusader. Nearly losing his life only clarified Jack's revived purpose. He had promised to be Anna's guardian in her darkest hour. Jack would gladly lay down his life if it meant upholding justice for those who could not defend themselves. Staring death in the face had crystallized what truly mattered to Jack. Not ego or glory, but making the world safer for innocents like Anna to not live in fear. He could look the monster Renault in the eyes unflinchingly and hold fast to what was right. In the young woman's silence, Jack had found his voice again. He would speak for truth and virtue against the viciousness of men like Renault. This was his life's calling. Jack had only rediscovered the noble man he aspired to be so many years ago. Anna had given him back his moral compass. He would follow it faithfully, wherever the heading, committed to due north. Chapter 18. The day of the trial arrived, and Jack prepared to testify, playing out the scenarios in his mind. He knew Renault's slick public persona masked a sadistic killer. The defense would try every trick to sow doubt. But Jack had to convince the jury to see through Renault's lies. Anna's future safety depended on it. Inside the crowded courtroom, Jack watched Renault escorted to the defendant's table in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. Even in chains, his eyes glinted with malevolent intellect. Jack's fists clenched involuntarily. The young prosecutor, Sierra Williams, approached Jack as he waited to take the stand. "Detective, I know facing Renault again is difficult," she said kindly. "Just recount the facts. We'll ensure justice is served." Jack nodded, steeling himself. He had to remain controlled on the stand, not let Renault get in his head. When the moment arrived, Sierra led Jack through his testimony methodically. Jack kept his gaze locked straight ahead, not trusting himself to look at Renault. After recounting the crime scene evidence and standoff, Sierra concluded, "Detective Ryan, in your opinion, did Vincent Renault willfully commit premeditated murder?" "Absolutely," Jack stated. "The evidence clearly shows Renault planned the execution in cold blood." On cross-examination, Renault's lawyer predictably tried to undermine Jack's account, accusing him of mishandling the investigation. Jack refused to take the bait, keeping his composure. Finally, it was Anna's turn on the witness stand. Jack's heart broke seeing her trembling hands clutch a sketchpad. She should never have been forced into this. But Anna bravely sketched out her memories while Sierra narrated. Jack could scarcely breathe during her testimony. This gentle soul had survived hell but remained unbroken. Anna was the true hero here. At last, the jury read the verdict, guilty on all counts. Jack released a shuddering breath as Renault was sentenced to life without parole. Catching Anna's eye, Jack gave a reassuring nod. Her small smile back filled him with hope. Chapter 19. The gavel banged with deafening finality. Renault stood numbly as the courtroom erupted. His cold facade had cracked, showing raw hatred underneath. Jack tensed as officers approached Renault to take him away. In a blur of movement, Renault wrested a gun from the holster of a courtroom guard. Jack instinctively shielded Anna as pandemonium broke out. "Nobody move," Renault shouted, brandishing the weapon wildly. "I will not go down for this." Backed into a corner, he seemed ready to take hostages or die in a hail of bullets. Heart hammering, Jack assessed the deranged gunman. "Renault, listen to me," he said evenly. "More violence won't change the verdict, but you still have a choice here. Don't throw your life away." Renault swung the gun toward Jack. "Don't tell me what I can and can't do, cop. I decide my fate, not you." His eyes blazed with chaotic fury, finger hovering over the trigger. Time seemed to slow. Jack knew he had seconds to act before Renault opened fire indiscriminately. As Renault's gaze momentarily flicked toward the courtroom doors, Jack launched himself forward, grabbing the killer's gun arm. They grappled violently until Jack managed to force the weapon down and twist it from Renault's grasp. Officers swarmed to subdue the enraged man. Jack could scarcely believe he had disarmed an armed and unstable killer without fatalities. His leg throbbed where Renault had pistol-whipped him in their struggle over the gun. But it was only a flesh wound. Glancing back at Anna's horrified face, Jack felt overwhelming relief she was unharmed. Renault had threatened her innocence one last time, but Jack had shielded her from evil. Now Renault would rot in a cell until death, as the law prescribed. He could terrorize no one else. Approaching Anna, Jack knelt and gently took her hand. "It's over now, I promise. He can never hurt you again." At this, Anna collapsed into Jack's arms, finally releasing the fear and grief overwhelming her. Jack just held her shaking shoulders, a silent, stalwart guardian. Let her tears wash away the nightmares. The light would rise again. Chapter 20. On the drive to see Anna after her release from witness protection, Jack contemplated all she had endured. He still bore lingering questions about what drove Renault to cold-blooded murder. Jack needed to understand the full truth to give Anna real closure. At Anna's new apartment, he found her looking more spirited than he'd ever seen. Her quick hug and beaming smile lightened Jack's soul. Over coffee, Jack broached a difficult subject. "Anna, now that Renault's locked up forever, will you feel able to tell me about his motives that night? I want to understand why anyone could do what he did." Anna's brow furrowed as she considered Jack's request. Finally, she took up a sketchpad and began drawing. First, she depicted two young boys playing innocently together. One noticeably resembled Renault. Jack intuitively felt these brothers shared a deep bond in childhood. Next, Anna drew the two boys older, the young Renault watching his brother eagerly as the older boy showed off bundles of cash and drugs. It was clear he idolized his criminal brother, wanting to prove himself. In the following scene, Renault stood over his brother's fresh grave, face etched in grief. Other shadowy figures lurked behind Renault, the Varney family. The narrative came into stark relief. Renault's beloved brother had perished on a shady family deal. Overcome by grief and a desire to take his brother's place in the cartel, Renault had conspired to eliminate Enzo Varney, leaving him the sole heir. He blamed the family for exploiting his brother. Jack murmured. Anna nodded solemnly, eyes full of sorrow for the lost boy Renault once was. Jack sat in silence as compassion for a killer he had hated washed over him. One rash choice born of personal tragedy had ruined so many lives. Senseless violence only bred more violence. If only Renault had chosen a different path forward from his grief. Anna reached out and squeezed Jack's hand. Despite all Renault had done, she had found it within herself to forgive. Her gentle wisdom and humanity shamed Jack's own bitterness and left him in awe. Chapter 21. Sunlight streamed into Anna's apartment as she proudly showed Jack her newest works. Vivid acrylic landscapes and lively portraits revealed a creative spirit flourishing once more. Seeing Anna thriving so soon after her trauma filled Jack with hope. Though the emotional scars would linger, she was on the path to healing, moving bravely ahead instead of allowing the darkness to consume her. "These pieces are incredible, Anna," Jack said admiringly. "Have you considered contacting an art gallery to display them?" Anna flushed with pride and gave an enthusiastic nod. She pointed to one canvas where she had painted a dignified portrait of Jack beside the scales of justice. Jack rubbed the back of his neck self-consciously. You didn't have to include me." But secretly, he was touched. After years adrift, Jack finally felt worthy of standing up for justice again. Anna's case had proven he could make a real difference through dogged determination. He would hold on to that feeling to drive his future work. With the case closed, there remained paperwork and procedures ahead. But the storm had passed. Jack no longer felt the restless urgency that had consumed him. He could breathe easier knowing Anna was safe and rediscovering joy. Of course, Jack would always keep vigilant watch over her, as both a father figure and friend. The two of them understood each other's spirits in a profound way few others could. Jack needed Anna's light and wisdom as much as she had needed his protection. Gazing around Anna's cheery apartment, Jack let all the built-up tension flow out of his shoulders. Here there was only life, fresh flowers on the table, the smells of home cooking, Anna's delighted laugh as she painted bold splashes of color. The world felt balanced once more. Chapter 22. Jack leaned back in his office chair, gazing at the evidence board, now cleared of Anna's case. It was finally time to close this intense chapter that had consumed his daily thoughts for so long. The chief knocked on Jack's open door. "Ryan, got a minute?" "For you, always," Jack replied lightly. Chief Marlowe folded his arms. "I owe you an apology. When you first caught this case, I doubted you were up to the task, but you proved me wrong by never giving up. Your gut instincts cracked it open." Jack waved off the praise. "I appreciate that, but this case only reminded me why I joined the force. It was bigger than a career achievement." The chief nodded. "Well, either way, you've earned yourself a new promotion. Make sure you take some vacation days to doctor's orders." He gave Jack a knowing wink before leaving him with his thoughts. Jack had to smile. For once, the future looked bright. He would always honor the sacrifices Anna made by continuing the fight against injustice and violence. Her case had been Jack's saving grace. Now others out there needed him to be their voice too. Jack would gladly accept the baton, using Anna's courage to light his own way forward. Wherever victims cried out for justice, Jack would not fail to take up the cause, always faithful in answering the call. Gazing out the window at the city streets below, Jack felt the currents shifting. A revival was coming. He had emerged tested and restored. Jack heard the distant sounds of sirens calling and knew it was time to begin again. The end.